Before we step into the dust and the courage of this old Wyoming story, I want to invite you to tap that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and tell me down in the comments which town you're watching from tonight. I love seeing how far these stories travel across this great country. Stay with me all the way to the end, because what Caleb Hawthorne said on that depot platform, well, you won't believe a plain man could say something so simple and yet so unforgettable. The whisper had run through Cottonwood Ridge before Margaret Sullivan's stagecoach even crossed the territorial line. A widow, plus-sized, from Pittsburgh, coming all this way to cook for Caleb Hawthorne. Cook, they said with a twitch at the corner of the mouth. Cook, they said with the kind of laugh that did the work of an insult without needing the words. By the time the Concord stage rolled in at noon, half the town had drifted toward the depot just to see her step down. The other half watched from windows. Margaret was a tall woman, broad-shouldered, broad-hipped, with iron-colored hair, pinned firm beneath a gray bonnet that had seen every weather God invented. She had a face that didn't smile easy. None of that mattered to the men crowded against the saloon railing across the street. "Caleb sent for that," the one called Briggs hollered. "Boys, he done ordered a mountain when he meant to order a milkmaid. She'll eat his pantry to the floorboards for Christmas. That ain't a wife, that's a wagon load." The laughter ran loose and ugly. Margaret didn't drop her gaze. She didn't lift her chin. She set the trunk down. The depot man, an older fellow named Whitman, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you all right?" "I'm fine, sir. Can I get you a cup of water if it's no trouble?" "Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am." He scurried off, as though grateful to have somewhere to be. Briggs swaggered closer. The town watched. Children peeked out from behind their mothers' skirts. "A heifer in petticoats," he said loud enough to ring against the depot wall. Margaret turned, slow, like a woman who'd done this before. "Y'all done?" That was when Briggs took the half-step back. Maybe it was the steadiness of her voice. Maybe it was the fact that she wasn't crying, wasn't blushing, wasn't running for the next stage out. "Mister," she said, "I buried my boy in '78. Cholera. He was 4 years old. I buried my husband 3 winters after that. Pneumonia took him in his sleep. So whatever you think you can call me, whatever name you got cooking in that mean little mouth of yours, it's already been said by better men than you, and I'm still standing." The platform went quiet. A horse stamped down the street. A door swung shut somewhere out of sight. Briggs licked his lips, tried to find his grin. Couldn't. That was when Caleb Hawthorne came around the corner of the depot leading a sorrel mare and a wagon mule. He was a man pushing 50 with a back that had been straighter once and a jaw shaved careful that morning, like a man who'd thought about what kind of impression he wanted to make. He took in the crowd. He took in Briggs half a foot back from where he'd started. He took in Margaret Sullivan standing on his platform with her trunk at her feet and her hand laid flat on the lid like she was steadying it against the wind. He took off his hat. He held it against his chest. "Mrs. Sullivan," then louder to the men at the saloon rail, "this woman has come 1,500 miles to keep my house. She is owed your respect." 3 words. She is owed. In a country where women still cooked for men who didn't notice, washed for men who didn't thank raised babies, for men who buried them and kept on writing. She is owed something was the kind of sentence a fellow didn't hear twice in a lifetime. Briggs scoffed. He tried. He really did. "Caleb, you don't gotta." "I don't gotta. That's so." Caleb's voice didn't rise. It just settled the way a stone settles into a riverbed. "But you do." A long beat. "You owe her an apology, son, right now, before God and these witnesses." Briggs's face went the color of a brick. "Like hell Right. Now." The saloon men weren't laughing anymore. Margaret watched the whole thing with the same dry, dust-colored eyes. When Briggs finally muttered, "Beg pardon, ma'am," through his teeth, she didn't smile. She didn't soften. She just gave one slow, level nod, the way a sheriff nods at a man who's surrendered his pistol. Then she turned back to Caleb. "Mr. Hawthorne, is that your wagon?" "It is, ma'am." Then I'd like to go home, please. The word home hung in the air a moment. He helped her with the trunk. The depot man came back with the water just as Caleb was setting the brake on the wagon. Margaret drank the whole cup standing up. She said, "Thank you kindly, sir," to Whitman, and Whitman tipped his hat like he'd just been knighted by the Queen of England. She climbed onto the wagon seat without help. The springs took her weight without complaint. She arranged her skirt over her knees. Caleb gathered the reins. He didn't speak again until the depot was 100 yards behind them. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "For what, Mr. Hawthorne?" "Should have been there when the stage rolled in. The mare threw a shoe coming up Cottonwood Pass. Cost me 20 minutes I didn't have." "It wasn't your fault." "That ain't what I'm sorry for." She glanced at him then. The first real glance. "Then say plain what you mean, sir. I am too tired and too old for the kind of conversation that goes long ways around a small barn." He almost smiled. Almost. "I'm sorry the first thing this country said to you was its worst." She looked at the road a while. "Mr. Hawthorne, let me get one thing straight before we ride a mile further. I read your advertisement. I answered it. I came west on a stage and a train and another stage with a dead boy's lock of hair in my locket and $3 in my purse. I am here to cook for you, to keep your house, to mend what needs mending, to do an honest day's labor for an honest day's wage. I am not here to be courted. I am not here to be saved. I am not here to fall in love. Are we clear, sir?" He took it in. He took a long time to answer, long enough that she thought maybe she'd offended him. Then he said, "Mrs. Sullivan, I lost my wife 6 years ago. I lost my little girl the year before that. I don't go to church anymore on account of I can't sit through a hymn without weeping, and I am the kind of man who would rather die than weep in public. I sent for a cook because I am tired of eating burnt biscuits and standing over my wife's grave on Sundays. I am not in the market for love, ma'am. I am in the market for a quiet house and food that ain't cinder. So yes, we are clear." She didn't answer for a long moment. Then we shall do very well together, Mr. Hawthorne." "Yes, ma'am. I expect we shall." A meadowlark called out somewhere off to the south. The mare's hooves struck soft against the trail. Margaret folded her hands in her lap. "Mr. Hawthorne." "Ma'am." What were the 3 words? "Ma'am. You said 3 words to those men, before they apologized. I want to know what they were." He took a long breath. He didn't look at her. "She is owed." She didn't say anything for a while. When she did, her voice was lower, softer, almost the voice of a different woman. "My husband used to say that, when the railroad men cheated us on a delivery. They are owed," he'd say. "Margaret, those people are owed." "He sounds like a good man, ma'am." "He was a foolish man, and a kind one, and there's a difference sometimes, and sometimes there ain't." Caleb didn't push. She didn't elaborate. The ranch came into view just before dusk. A sod and timber main house, a sagging barn, a windbreak of cottonwoods along the North Creek. Smoke rose from one chimney. A black and tan dog came running tail-thumping and barked twice at the wagon before falling silent like he wasn't sure who he was supposed to be barking at. "That's Major," Caleb said. "He's old. He's deaf in one ear. He'll be your friend by Tuesday." "Tuesday." Margaret almost let the corner of her mouth lift. "I'll mark my calendar." He climbed down. He came around to her side. He offered his hand. She didn't take it. She climbed down herself, the same way she'd climbed up. He didn't make anything of it. He hauled her trunk down and shouldered it without complaint, though it was clear from the set of his back that something inside him was paining him. "Old wound?" she asked as they walked toward the house. "Vicksburg. You were in the war." "I was a boy in the war, ma'am." "My husband was at Antietam. He never spoke a word of it. Not one word in all our married life." "That's the way of it." "Yes." They reached the porch. He set the trunk down. He opened the door for her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sullivan." She stepped inside. There was a kitchen with a cast-iron range that needed blacking and a pantry that needed a woman's eye. There was a parlor with a piano under a sheet and a sofa in the doorway. Which room is mine? The one at the end of the hall. Was my sister's when she lived. There's a window that looks east. Sun'll wake you. That's fine. There's a key in the drawer of the nightstand. You can lock it from the inside if it makes you... Mr. Hawthorne. Ma'am. I am a 51-year-old widow. I have never in all my born days met the man whose company I wanted to lock myself away from. If such a man ever appears on this ranch, sir, I will not be locking the door. I will be reaching for a skillet. She held his eye. A very small thing moved at the corner of his mouth. It was not quite a smile. It was the ghost of where a smile used to live back when the man who owned that mouth still had reasons to smile. Yes, ma'am, he said. I imagine you would. She walked down the hall to her room and shut the door behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed. She unpinned her bonnet. She put her hands over her face. She did not weep. She had not wept in 11 years. Not on the train, not on the stage, not on the platform in Cottonwood Ridge with the men of the territory laughing at her body. Not when Caleb Hawthorne said she is owed and the saloon men went quiet. But she sat for a long time with her hands over her face. Out in the kitchen, Caleb stood at the window with his hat still in his hand. He did not light the lamp. He thought just for a moment of his wife. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the 3 words he'd said on the platform she is owed, and how he had not meant them the way a chivalrous man means them, the way a man means a thing that costs him nothing. He had meant them the way a man means a debt, because there was a thing happening in Cottonwood Ridge that no one outside the ranch knew about. There was a thing happening that had to do with Caleb's land and the men at the saloon, and a banker over in Laramie with very white teeth and a very black ledger. There was a thing happening that meant Caleb Hawthorne had less than 9 months to find $500 in cash money or lose the home his wife had built with her own 2 hands. He had not told the cook he hired about any of it. He was not yet going to, but he knew he had known the moment Margaret Sullivan stepped off the stage and faced down a town that meant to break her, that the woman at the end of the hall was not a cook. She was a debt the world had been racking up against itself for a long, long time, and someday soon, somebody was going to have to pay her what was owed. Major the old dog padded into the kitchen and leaned his gray muzzle against Caleb's knee. Caleb laid a hand on the dog's head. "Tuesday hell," he murmured. "She's already won you, ain't she?" The dog's tail thumped twice against the floorboards. In the room at the end of the hall, Margaret finally lowered her hands. She rose. She opened her trunk. She took out a framed photograph of a small boy in a sailor suit and a framed photograph of a tall man with a kind, foolish smile, and she set them on the nightstand where the morning sun would find them. Then she went to the kitchen. Caleb looked up. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, rolling her sleeves to the elbow, "I believe there's a chicken in your yard that's about to make our acquaintance." The first real expression of his afternoon broke across his face like weather changing. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I expect there is." She caught the chicken with the kind of efficiency a Pittsburgh widow learns when grief has stripped away every motion that doesn't serve. By the time the sun was full down, there was a pot on the stove, and the kitchen smelled of onion and rendered fat, and the dog had moved his old bones to a square of warm floor beside the range. Caleb sat at the kitchen table. He had not sat at this kitchen table for supper in 2 years and 7 months. He had taken his food at the parlor window mostly, or out on the porch, or sometimes not at all. He didn't say that. He just sat. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'd be obliged if you'd say grace." He looked up. "Ma'am, I told you. I am not asking you to attend a church service, sir. I am asking you to thank the bird." A pause. The bird, sir." He almost laughed. He swallowed it down. He bowed his head. "Lord, we thank you for the bird, and the woman who caught the bird, and the mercy of a hot supper at the end of a long road. Amen. Amen." She served him first. She served herself second. She sat down opposite him at his own kitchen table for the first time in 2 years and 7 months, and she picked up her fork and she ate. He watched her briefly. Then, he ate too. For a long while there was only the sound of forks against tin plates, Major's slow breathing on the floor, the wind picking up against the cottonwoods outside. "Mr. Hawthorne?" "Ma'am?" "There's a wagon coming." He stilled. He didn't even turn his head. "How far out?" "Couple minutes. Coming up the South Trail." "You can hear that from inside." "My husband was a freightman, sir. I have heard a wagon coming up a road since I was 9 years old. It's a heavy team, 2 horses. The wagon's empty or near." He set his fork down. He stood up slow. "Mrs. Sullivan." "Mr. Hawthorne." "Whoever that is at the door, you do not open it. Not tonight. Not ever. Not when the sun is down. You understand?" She had not yet asked him what trouble he was in. She had not pressed for the story that lay under his silence, like water lies under thin ice. But she heard him now. She heard him plain. "Yes, sir. I understand." He reached behind the kitchen door. He took down a Henry rifle that had not been touched in a year. He checked the load with hands that remembered everything they had forgotten. The wagon stopped in front of the house. A voice called out from the yard. A polished voice. The kind of voice that belonged to a man who never lifted anything heavier than a pen. "Hawthorne, Caleb Hawthorne." "Open the door, son. We need to talk about your note." Caleb closed his eyes for 1 second. 1 second only. Then he opened them. He looked at the woman at his table. And the woman at his table, who had buried a son and a husband, and crossed a continent to keep house for a stranger she had not yet learned to call by his Christian name, set her fork down very carefully on the edge of her plate. She folded her napkin. She rose. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said very softly, "would you like company at the door?" Caleb didn't answer her right away. He just looked at her across the kitchen at the napkin she had folded with such care, at the way she stood from the table without making a sound at the rifle. In his own hand he had almost forgotten he was holding. "Mrs. Sullivan, this ain't your fight." "Mr. Hawthorne, I have been at your table 11 hours. I have eaten your bread. The Lord may not see fit to call us kin, sir, but the salt in your soup says different." "That don't oblige you to." "It obliges me plenty." She moved toward the door. He stepped in front of her. "At least let me go first." "I would not dream of going first, Mr. Hawthorne. I would, however, like the door open while you do it, so I can hear what is said." He held her eye a beat longer. Then he nodded once and turned the latch. The voice that came from the yard was polished smooth. It was the kind of voice that had never lifted anything heavier than a pen. "Caleb, you took your time, son." "Silas, I've taken my supper. State your business and get off my land." "Won't be your land much longer." The line landed like a stone dropped into a deep well. "I have until April." "You had until April. Circumstances change, Caleb. The directors of the First Bank of Laramie sat down on Tuesday afternoon, and they voted to call your note. You have 60 days. "That ain't legal." "It's plenty legal. It's Article 11 of the contract you signed when your Sarah was on her deathbed. Notwithstanding stated maturity, the holder reserves the right. I remember the article, Silas. I don't recall agreeing it was a Christian one. The bank ain't a church, son." From the wagon, Briggs let out a thin little laugh. The bruise on his pride from the depot platform that afternoon was still showing on his face. Margaret saw it the moment she stepped into the doorway behind Caleb, and she saw the polished man on the horse beside him at the same time. Frock coat, pocket watch, boots that had never walked anywhere they hadn't chosen to walk. The polished man saw her too. "And this," he said very smooth, "must be Mrs. Sullivan." Caleb's shoulders went stiff. "How do you know her name, Silas?" "Caleb. A widower in this country sends to Pittsburgh for a woman. Every wire operator from here to Cheyenne knows about it before the woman does. Pleased to make your acquaintance, ma'am. Silas Crane, First Bank of Laramie." "Mr. Crane." She did not say pleased. She did not say anything that would let him stand on her courtesy. "I trust your journey was a pleasant one, ma'am." "I trust you have business with my employer, sir." and that you'll state it and let me return to my supper." A small flicker crossed Crane's face. He was not used to being addressed that way by a hired woman in a hallway. He absorbed it the way a man absorbs a fly landing on his hand. Direct. I like that. Caleb, son, you might keep her. Get to your point, Silas. The point is 60 days. The point is $512 cash. No checks. No promissory notes. No IOUs. The point, son, is that there is a party in Cheyenne with very deep pockets who has expressed considerable interest in your acreage. If you are not in a position to redeem the note when it comes due, I will have to allow that party to satisfy it. I am doing you the courtesy of telling you so to your face. You're doing me the courtesy of insulting me to my face, Silas. Ought to thank him, Caleb, Briggs said from the wagon. Caleb did not look at Briggs. He didn't have to. Briggs, you speak one more time tonight, and I will put a bullet through your hat. It is the third warning I have given you in your life. You know what comes after the third warning. Briggs shut his mouth so fast you could hear his teeth. Mr. Crane, Margaret said. Ma'am? May I ask you a question, sir? Of course. Who is the party in Cheyenne? A beat. Crane had not been expecting that one. That is a confidential matter, Mrs. Sullivan. Then perhaps you might answer an unconfidential one. What party in Cheyenne has the kind of deep pockets you describe in a year when the cattle market is flat on its back and the railroads are running paper instead of gold? What party in Cheyenne, sir, is buying up frontier acreage during the worst beef season since the Panic of '73? Crane stared at her. Mrs. Sullivan, you appear to know a great deal about high finance for a kitchen woman. My husband was a freight contractor for the Pennsylvania Railroad, sir. I read his ledgers every Sunday evening of our 17 years of marriage. I know the smell of money. And I know, Mr. Crane, the smell of a man pretending to have more of it than he does. Crane's smile faltered. Not much. Just enough. Just at the corner. He recovered the way a man recovers his hat in a wind quick and with his back turned away from whoever was watching. Caleb. 60 days. I will send a man up with the official papers in the morning. Mrs. Sullivan. I look forward to making your fuller acquaintance. We are practically neighbors, you understand. I have taken a room at the Cottonwood Hotel for the next several weeks, until matters resolve. He tipped his hat. He wheeled the horse. Briggs flicked the reins and the wagon rumbled off into the dark, and the lantern on its bedside swung crooked all the way down the south trail. Caleb shut the door very slowly. He set the rifle against the wall. He turned to her. Mrs. Sullivan. Mr. Hawthorne. I owe you an explanation. You owe me nothing, sir. I do. I sent to Pittsburgh for a cook. I did not send for whatever was just standing on my porch. You did not sign on for that. Mr. Hawthorne, sit down. Ma'am, Sit down. He sat. She sat down opposite him. She picked up her napkin. She folded it again, smaller, until it was a tight square in her palm. I am going to ask you 4 questions, sir. I would be obliged if you would answer them plain. Ask, ma'am. First question. How much do you owe? $512, with interest. By when? 60 days, apparently, was 9 months, until 10 minutes ago. Third question. What is the land worth? A beat. Ma'am, that is a complicated answer. Then uncomplicate it, Mr. Hawthorne. I have had enough complicated for one day. He looked down at his hands. They were big hands, cracked across the knuckles from work and weather. The land as ranching country is worth maybe $3 an acre. I have 240 acres, so 700 some. The house, the barn, the outbuildings, maybe another 200. So $900? Roundabout. And Mr. Crane is calling a note of 500. Mr. Hawthorne, why is he so desperate to take it? That, ma'am, is the 4th question, and I don't know the answer. Yes, you do, sir. He looked up. You may not know this name, Mr. Hawthorne, but you know the reason. Because if a frontier banker shows up at your door at supper time in his city clothes with a hired bully in his wagon, he is not doing it for a $500 note on a Wyoming ranch. He is doing it for whatever is underneath that ranch, or coming through that ranch, or standing on that ranch that he has not yet told you about. A long beat. The fire in the range popped once and settled. Mrs. Sullivan, I expect we both know what is coming through this ranch. The Union Pacific. He nodded. There's been surveyors, twice last summer, once this spring. I ran them off the second time. I have not signed a thing. And the rumor is the spur runs from Laramie up through Cottonwood Ridge and on to Miles City. That's the rumor. And your ranch sits exactly on the line. I expect it does. She breathed out slow. She looked at the lamp on the table for a long moment, and the lamp light moved across her face, and what was in her face was not surprise. It was a woman watching the last piece of a puzzle drop into place after she had already guessed the picture. Mr. Hawthorne, why did you not pay this note when you had 9 months to find $500? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower than it had been. Mrs. Sullivan, I have not had a good year. I have not had a good year since my Sarah went. I lost half the herd to the bad winter of '83. I lost a quarter of what was left to the drought of '84. I have spent every dollar I had keeping the ranch in feed and keeping my men in wages. I have not been a good steward of what my wife left me. That is the plain truth, ma'am. She was quiet a long moment. How many men do you have? 2. Tom Riley, who is old enough to be my father, and his nephew Sam, who is 16 and afraid of his own shadow. They will be back from the north pasture day after tomorrow. And how much cash money do you have this minute in this house? A long pause. $31. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was no pity in them. There was something else. Something that the men on the depot platform that afternoon would have known to be afraid of if they had been smart enough to look. Then we have 60 days to find $481. I am a member of this household, Mr. Hawthorne, am I not? I have eaten at your table. I have caught your chicken. I have heard your enemies speak my name in your dooryard. I am in this fight, sir, whether I ask to be or not, and I do not walk away from fights I am already in. He stared at her. Mrs. Sullivan, you came here to cook. I came here to cook, Mr. Hawthorne, and what a woman comes for is not always what she is for. The words settled in the kitchen and did not leave it. She stood. She walked to the window. She put her hand flat against the cold glass. Mr. Hawthorne. Ma'am. There is something else I would like to know. Ask ma'am. Who is Briggs to Crane? Briggs is the kind of man who runs errands for the kind of man Crane is, ma'am. He used to work this ranch. I let him go 3 years back. Why? He stole. From you. From me. And now he is running errands for the man who is trying to take what is left of you. Yes. She nodded once. The motion was small, but it was final. Mr. Hawthorne, I want you to know one thing about me before we go any further. Ma'am, I do not hate easy. I did not hate the boys who pulled my pigtails in Sunday school in 1846. I did not hate the country doctor who failed to save my son in '78. I did not hate the men on your depot platform who called me what they called me this afternoon. I have spent 51 years not hating, sir. But there is a kind of man in this world who builds his living out of the suffering of women and children, and that kind of man I do hate. I hate him fully. I hate him without apology. And Mr. Silas Crane is that kind of man. Yes, ma'am, I expect he is. She turned from the window then, and for the first time since she had stepped off the stagecoach onto a platform full of strangers, her dust-colored eyes were not dry. But she was still not weeping, because what was in her eyes was not water, it was iron. Mr. Hawthorne, I am not going to lose this ranch. Mrs. Sullivan, I am not going to lose this ranch, sir. Now you can sit down with me at this table in the morning, and we can plan it together. Or you can go on grieving in this kitchen all by yourself the way you have been doing for 6 years. But I am telling you plain, I am not going to lose this ranch. He looked at her a long time. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. Yes, ma'am. Good. She sat back down at the table. She picked up her fork. The soup had gone cold. She did not seem to mind. "Mr. Hawthorne, eat your supper. It is still good." "Ma'am." He ate. He ate the whole bowl. He had not finished a meal in this kitchen in 2 years and 7 months, and he ate the whole bowl. And when he was done, he set the spoon down very carefully on the rim of the bowl, the way his wife had once taught him to do. Margaret watched him do it. She did not say anything about it, but something moved at the corner of her own mouth, and it was not quite a smile either, and it was the closest the kitchen had come to a smile since Sarah Hawthorne had died. Then Major began to bark. Out in the dark beyond the cottonwoods, the old dog's voice changed quick. From the slow grumble of an old animal that recognized everything it heard, into something sharp and high and warning. There was somebody else out there. Caleb was on his feet before Margaret had set down her fork. "Mr. Hawthorne." "Behind me. Now." "That is not Crane coming back." "No, it ain't." He took down the rifle a second time. "How do you know it ain't Crane?" "Because Crane left south, and whoever's out there now is north of the barn." "Who comes at a house from the north at this hour, sir?" He didn't answer. She did not need him to. The lamp guttered once on the kitchen table. The wind in the cottonwoods, which had stilled completely for a minute, came back. And out in the black beyond the porch, where the moonlight had not yet found the broken ground, somebody laid a hand on the latch of the barn door and pulled it slow. The hinge creaked. Major's bark cut off mid-sound. Margaret looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the door. And out in the dooryard, very soft, very close, a man's voice spoke a single word into the dark. "Hawthorne!" Caleb did not lower the rifle. He moved to the door slow, and Margaret stayed 2 steps behind him, with her hand braced on the back of the kitchen chair, like she meant to pick it up and use it. "Who's out there?" "Caleb, it's Tom. For God's sake, Caleb, open the damn door." The voice cracked on the last word. Margaret heard it crack. So did Caleb. He threw the latch. Tom Riley stood on the porch with blood on his shirt that was not his own. In his arms, sagging like wet wash on a line, was a boy. The boy's head hung back. There was a dark, slow shine across his temple. His left boot was gone. "Help me, Caleb. Help me." "Bring him in." Tom staggered through the doorway, and Margaret was already moving. She swept the table clear with one stroke of her forearm, sending soup bowl and fork and napkin down to the floorboards without a glance, and she pointed at the cleared boards, and she said it plain. "There, lay him there. Mr. Riley, what happened to this boy?" 3 men, ridge above the north pasture, masks on their faces. Sam saw him first. "Don't talk. Move. Mr. Hawthorne, every clean rag in this house. The whiskey from your sideboard. The biggest kettle you own full of water on the stove this minute." Caleb moved. He did not argue. Tom Riley was a man in his 60s, with bowed legs and a white beard going yellow at the corners of his mouth, and his hands trembled as he lowered the boy. "He ain't dead." "Margaret, Mrs. Sullivan, he ain't dead." He breathed at the bottom of the hill. "He is not dead, Mr. Riley. I need you to step 3 paces back and let me see him." Tom Riley took 3 paces back. Margaret bent over the boy. She put her ear to his chest. She put 2 fingers to the side of his throat. She lifted his eyelid with her thumb. 16, you said. Come Christmas. What is his Christian name? Sam. Samuel Riley. Samuel. Samuel, can you hear me, son? The boy's eyelid fluttered. Just once. Just enough. Good boy. You hold on, son. You just hold on. Caleb was back with rags and water in the bottle. Margaret was already lifting the boy's shirt up to see what else they had done to him. There were boot marks on his ribs, 3 of them, stamped clean into the skin like a brand. Caleb made a sound at the back of his throat that was not a word. Mr. Hawthorne. Margaret, Mr. Hawthorne. He swallowed it. He looked at her. You are not riding out tonight. Margaret, if you tell me one more time. You are not riding out tonight, sir, because if you do, this boy will not have a man in this house when he wakes. And he is going to wake Mr. Hawthorne. I will not allow him to do otherwise. But he will need both of us when he does, and you cannot be in two places at once." His jaw worked. The rifle was still in his hand. "They went after a child, Margaret." "I see what they did. I have eyes." "They went after a child. And tomorrow, sir, tomorrow, when the sun is up and the marshal is at his desk and half the town can see your face tomorrow, we will go after the men who went after the child. Tonight, we save the child. Sit down." He set the rifle against the wall. He sat down. Margaret began to work. She cleaned the head wound. She set Tom Riley to wringing rags in cold water. She cracked the bottle of whiskey and poured a careful measure into a tin cup and asked Caleb to soak the deepest cut in it before she bound it. She moved the way a woman moves who has buried a son and learned every lesson too late. By the time the moon had cleared the cottonwoods, the boy was breathing slow and even on the kitchen table, and Margaret had finally permitted Tom Riley to swallow a finger of the whiskey he had been eyeing for an hour. "Mr. Riley?" "Ma'am." "Tell us, now, slow." Tom Riley's hands closed around the cup. "We were 2 days out on the north pasture, counting what's left of the herd. Sam was on the ridge with the glass. Around supper time he come down white as a sheet, and he says there's 3 riders coming up the wash. I told him it was likely surveyors. He says no. These men got their faces tied up, 3 of them, coming hard." "Did you recognize the horses?" "One of 'em, roan, white star on the forehead. Caleb, that's Briggs' horse. I'd swear it on a Bible." Caleb's hand on the table closed into a fist. "Briggs? Briggs. Go on, Tom. They come up on us slow, like they wanted us to see them. I had the carbine, but Sam was already past the wagon, and one of them threw a rope around him before I could shoulder it. The other 2 had their pistols on me. They said Caleb. Caleb, they said, tell Hawthorne the bank ain't kind to men who can't read Article 11. That's what they said. Word for word. Then they kicked the boy. They kicked him 3 times. They laughed about it. They left him. They told me to put him on the wagon and bring him home so Caleb could see what the new article looked like." The kitchen was silent. Caleb stared at the table. Margaret stared at the boy. Tom Riley was not crying. He was an old man, and he was past crying, but he was breathing wrong the way a man breathes who would like to. "Mr. Riley?" "Ma'am." "You did exactly right." "Ma'am, You brought the boy home alive. There were 3 men with pistols on you, and you brought a beaten child home alive. You did exactly right, sir. Do not let any man in this kitchen tell you otherwise tonight." She did not look at Caleb when she said it. She did not need to. Caleb said nothing. But after a long moment he reached across the table and laid his hand on Tom Riley's forearm and squeezed it once. That was all. That was enough. "Mr. Hawthorne, in the morning you ride into town." "I will ride into town tonight." "You will ride in the morning, sir, when the sun is up and the marshal is at his desk, and there are witnesses on every porch from the livery to the church. You will not ride in the dark to a town that has already laughed at you once today. You will ride in the daylight in a clean shirt with this old man on your right and me on your left, and you will walk into the marshal's office, and you will lay this story on his desk in front of God and every loafer at the saloon rail. That, sir, is how we begin." "And what does the marshal do?" "Margaret, you met those men on the platform yesterday. You think a single one of them is going to look a banker in the eye and tell him he hired thugs? No, sir. I do not think a single one of them will. Then, but I believe that one of them somewhere in that town has been waiting for a reason to. And the day a child gets kicked in the ribs for his uncle's employer's overdue note that day, Mr. Hawthorne, is the day the waiting ends." He looked at her a long time. "You don't know this town, Margaret." "I have known a town, sir. They are all the same town in the end." The morning came up gray and cold. Margaret rode beside Caleb on the wagon seat with Tom Riley's old carbine resting across her lap, because Caleb had asked her to carry it, and she had not argued. Major sat between them on the box. He was a dog who did not normally ride. He had insisted. The town of Cottonwood Ridge was already moving when they came up the main street. A wagon outside the mercantile. The blacksmith's bellows hissing. 2 women with baskets coming out of the post office. Heads turned and stayed turned. Margaret did not look at the heads. She kept her eyes on the marshal's door at the end of the street. There's Crane's horse. Where? The hitch in front of the hotel. The bay with the silver trim on the bridle. You got a good eye, Mrs. Sullivan. My husband ran a freight company, Mr. Hawthorne. I have known the difference between a $60 saddle and a 60-cent one since I was a girl. They pulled up in front of the marshal's office. Caleb wrapped the reins. He came around to help her down. She let him this time, not because she needed it, but because she had decided she would let the town see him do it. She wanted them to see. The marshal was a man named Harlan Pike, somewhere on the better side of 50, and somewhere on the worse side of caring. He was at his desk eating a piece of cornbread when they walked in. Caleb. Harlan. You done come in early. Boy got beat half to death on my north range yesterday evening. 3 masked men. I am here to file. Pike stopped chewing. Caleb. I am here to file Harlan. You best sit down, son. I'm fine standing. Caleb, sit down. You and the lady both. Margaret did not sit. Marshal, the boy is 16. His name is Samuel Riley. He is in my employer's kitchen this minute on 3 blankets with a fractured rib and a head wound that I spent the night praying does not turn worse. One of the horses was recognized by his uncle, who has worked these ranges 35 years. The riders delivered a verbal message that referred plainly to a banker's loan terms. I am asking you, sir, to write that down. Pike looked her up and down. He set the cornbread on the desk like a man setting down a card he didn't mean to play. Ma'am, who might you be? Margaret Sullivan, sir, housekeeper to Mr. Hawthorne. You come in on the stage yesterday. I did. Pike rubbed his jaw. He looked at Caleb. Caleb, this is going to sound like a particular kind of accusation. It is a particular kind of accusation, Harlan. You sure you want to make it? Caleb did not answer. Margaret did. Marshal Pike, you have a sworn duty. The lady standing in front of you is a 51-year-old widow who has not slept in 19 hours and has a child's blood under her fingernails. I am telling you, sir, that a banker named Silas Crane drove out to that ranch last night and threatened my employer in his own dooryard. I am telling you that within 4 hours of that threat, 3 masked men beat an innocent boy half to death on the same ranch's pasture and delivered a message referring to the same banker's terms. One of those men by sworn testimony rode a horse well known in this town. I am telling you all this, Marshal, on the record. Now you can pick up your pen, sir, or you can pick up your hat and walk out the back door and pretend none of us came in. Which will it be? Pike looked at her a long time. He picked up the pen. She watched him write. She watched the way his hand moved across the page. She watched him form the word Crane on the second line, and she watched the way his shoulders set when he did, and she filed the look of that away inside herself for later. When he had finished, he said, I'll have to ride out and inspect the boy. I'll have to talk to the uncle. I'll have to send a wire to Laramie for confirmation on the bank's procedure. Caleb, you understand? I understand fine, Harlan. Could be a few days. Could be. Could be longer. Margaret almost smiled. Of course, Marshal. They stepped back out onto the boardwalk. The morning sun was on the street now. A small hand caught the edge of Margaret's sleeve. Lady, come. She turned. The woman was small, gray-haired, no taller than her shoulder, in a faded blue tunic and an apron stained with bluing. Her eyes were as steady as Margaret's own. Ma'am. Come quick. Side alley. You, not the man. 3-minute. I bring her back, Mr. Caleb. Mrs. Yue. 3-minute, Mr. Caleb. You stand here. She drew Margaret into the narrow space between the marshal's office and the chandler's shop. She moved fast for a woman her age. Ma'am, I do not know you. I know you, lady. I see you yesterday at the depot. Whole town see. You stand. Good. You stand good. Thank you, ma'am. My name, Mrs. Yue. My husband, he build railroad. He die in 1869. Chinese powder. They give me $40. They give Irish widow $800. I tell you this because today I tell you something else. Listen me good. I am listening, ma'am. Silas Crane. You meet him? I met him last night. Last name not Crane. Margaret's breath caught. Ma'am. Name not Crane. Name Cranston. I know because my brother work railroad office in Omaha. My brother see paper. Mr. Cranston he have brother in Cheyenne. Brother name Edward Cranston. Edward Cranston he railroad commissioner. You understand, lady? Yes, ma'am, I understand you very well. Brothers. They buy land before railroad come. They tell railroad where to go. Railroad come. They sell land back to railroad. 10 time the price. 20 time. They do this in Nebraska. They do this in Kansas. Now they do this in Wyoming. Mr. Caleb he the last farm on the line. The last one not sign. Other 6 farms sign already. You ask Mr. Caleb. He tell you. Only Mr. Caleb hold out. Margaret stared at her. They have been waiting for him to lose. They have been helping him lose lady. Bad winter, drought, steers gone. Some God, some not God, some men. Men who put salt in the well. Men who cut the fence in the storm. Men who shoot the bull in 74. Not bad luck. How long have you known Mrs. Yue? 2 year. I tell no one. I am Chinese widow in Wyoming territory. Who listen me nobody, so I wait. I wait for someone they cannot make small. Yesterday on the depot platform I see you not bend. I think maybe lady is the one. Her small hand closed around Margaret's wrist with surprising strength. You take Mr. Caleb. You go home. Do not tell Marshall. Marshall is Crane man. 3 year. Cash money and desk drawer. I see one time when I deliver shirts. Margaret's mouth had gone dry. Mrs. Yue, why are you telling me this now? The old woman's smile was the smallest, hardest smile Margaret had ever seen. Because last night, lady, 3 men come to my laundry. They want clean shirts. They have blood on them, boy blood. They laugh when they pay. They say clean it good Chinese. The new article gonna be a busy one. I clean their shirts. I count their faces. I remember 3 faces. I tell you now. Mrs. Yue? Yes, lady. Can you write what you just told me? Will you put your name to it? You ask me thing, my own children never ask me, lady. I am sorry. No. Do not sorry. I will write. I will sign. But not here. You come tonight. After sundown. Side door of the laundry. You come, you bring Mr. Caleb, you bring an honest witness. I sign. Then we all in this fight together. You and me, and Mr. Caleb. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Good, now go. Marshall already on his way to telegraph office. 3 minute is up. We talk 3 minute. She let go of Margaret's wrist. Margaret walked back out of the alley. Caleb was waiting on the boardwalk with his hat in his hand. What did she say? She said the marshal is going to the telegraph office. Margaret. What did she say? Mr. Hawthorne, get in the wagon, drive. I will tell you on the road. But you need to know, sir, that what you and I just walked into in that office, that was not a fight. That was an audition. And we passed. You're shaking. I am not shaking, sir. I am cold. Climb in the wagon, please. He climbed in. She climbed in beside him. And as they pulled away from the marshal's office, the front door of the Cottonwood Hotel across the street opened, and Silas Crane stepped out into the morning sun in his city coat. He raised one hand to shade his eyes. He watched the back of Margaret Sullivan's gray bonnet as the wagon rolled north out of town. And he smiled. He smiled the way a man smiles when he has just received word that the game finally is beginning. The wagon rolled north out of town, and Margaret did not speak for nearly a mile. Caleb did not push her. He drove. The horses knew the road. He let the silence do the work of what could not be said yet. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and even. Mr. Hawthorne, there are 7 ranches on the rail spur line. Yours is the last. The other 6 belong to McTavish Pearson Henderson, the Larson brothers, a widow named Hill, and a young couple named Carver. All sold, to the First Bank of Laramie, at fire sale prices, within the last 4 years. And Mrs. Yue believes. Mrs. Yue has watched it, from a laundry tub, for 2 years. His hands tightened on the reins. Andrew McTavish lost his barn to lightning in March of last year. There was no lightning that March, Margaret. We had a dry spring. I thought the man was unlucky. He was not unlucky, Mr. Hawthorne. She killed his wife. What did you say? Sarah, my wife. We were not sick the same year, Margaret. The fever came through here in '80. The McTavishes had it too. Andrew's wife went first. My Sarah went a week later. My little Hannah was sick 3 days. The doctor said the well water. The doctor said do not drink from the well. The well had been fine 18 years. Mr. Hawthorne. If somebody put something in my well, Margaret. If somebody... Stop the wagon. Margaret? I said stop the wagon, sir. He stopped it. She climbed down. She walked 20 paces out into the grass. She stood with her back to him. Her shoulders were not moving, but he could see her hands were balled tight at her sides. When she came back, her face was perfectly calm. We are not going to discuss your wife and your daughter on this wagon road today, Mr. Hawthorne. Not because I do not believe you, because if I let myself believe you here today with the boy bleeding at home and the laundry meeting at sundown, I will not be able to do what needs doing. So we will set that down. We will pick it up again when there is a man named Cranston in chains. Do you understand me, sir? Yes, ma'am. Climb down. Ma'am? Climb down off the wagon, please. He climbed down. He stood in front of her. She did something she had not done since she had stepped off the stage in Cottonwood Ridge. She took his hand. She did not hold it the way a sweetheart holds a hand. She held it the way a doctor holds the wrist of a patient who is bleeding out and needs to be made to focus. Caleb Hawthorne, listen to me. Margaret, listen. I have buried a child. I know what it is. I know the shape of it. There is no clean ending for it. There is no version of life after it that does not still carry the weight of it. I am telling you this, sir, because I do not want you to ride into this fight today, thinking that if we win, you will get your Sarah back. You will not. You will get justice. You will get the men who did this. You will not get your wife. You will not get your daughter. You will get to wake up tomorrow morning in a house that is still yours. That is what we are fighting for. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. Good. She let go of his hand. She climbed back onto the wagon seat. Margaret. Drive, sir. He drove. The ranch was too quiet when they came up the trail. No Major running out. No smoke from the chimney. Caleb had his hand on the rifle before the wagon stopped. But the door opened, and Tom Riley came out onto the porch, and his face was the face of a man who had just heard the best news of his life. He woke up. Tom, he woke up an hour ago, Caleb. He drank water. He asked for his mama. He went back to sleep, but he woke up first. He woke up. Margaret did not say anything. She walked past him into the house. The boy was on the kitchen table, still on his 3 blankets, his head turned toward the window. His eyes opened when she came in. Mrs. Sullivan? Sam Riley. Did I dream a lady put something on my head? You did not dream it, son. The lady is right here. I'm thirsty, ma'am. I have water and I have broth. You will have both. She fed him broth 1 slow spoonful at a time, the way she had fed her own boy in '78 before there was nothing left to feed him. She did not weep. She had not wept in 11 years. But she fed him slow. After a while, Caleb came in and stood in the doorway and watched. After a while, Sam said, Mr. Hawthorne? Sam? I seen one of 'em. What did you say? Before they put the rope on me. I seen one of 'em without his mask. He was tying it up when I come over the rise. I seen his face. He was the one rode in front. Sam, listen to me. Was it a face you knew? Yes, ma'am. Who, son? It was Mr. Pike. It was the marshal. The kitchen went silent. Tom Riley in the doorway behind Caleb made a sound like a man taking a hit to the ribs. Sam. Yes, ma'am. You are sure of this? You are certain? I've been knowing the marshal's face since I was 8 years old, ma'am, on a horse and behind a desk and in church on Sunday. I am sure. Mr. Hawthorne. Margaret. We do not have until tomorrow. No, ma'am, we do not. Who in this town do you trust? Margaret. There is no man in this town I trust today. There is one, sir, or there is none. Pick. A beat. There is the preacher. What is his name? Elias Bowen. He buried my wife. He buried my daughter. He buried my mother when I was 9 years old. Has he ever been in Mr. Crane's pocket? I don't believe he has. He is a poor man, Margaret. He has been poor his whole life. He preaches in a building with a leak in the roof, and his wife teaches the school for 30 cents a week. Then we ride for the preacher. He will be the witness with Mrs. Yue. Mr. Riley, you will stay with the boy, with the carbine. Mr. Hawthorne, bring up the sidearm from the trunk in the parlor. Margaret, you know how to use a sidearm. My husband insisted, Mr. Hawthorne. Pittsburgh was not always a kind city to a freight contractor's wife. I am beginning to think I have been underestimating the city of Pittsburgh. Most men do. The preacher Elias Bowen was a tall, thin man with white hair that did not lie flat, and a coat that had been mended at both elbows. He was in the chapel sweeping when they came in. He looked up. He looked at Caleb's face. He set the broom against the pew. Caleb. Reverend. I had a feeling I would see you this week. Did you, sir? I had a feeling, son. I have been having feelings about a number of things in this town. Most of them I have kept to myself because I am a coward, and because I am 67 years old, and because the wife I love depends on a 30-cent salary to put bread on a board. I am tired, Caleb. I am tired of being a coward. So whatever you have come to ask me, son, ask it. Caleb stared at him. Margaret stepped forward. Reverend Bowen, my name is Margaret Sullivan. I am Mr. Hawthorne's housekeeper. We need a witness tonight at the laundry of Mrs. Yue. She is going to sign her name to the truth, and we need a man whose word is good in this town to put his hand to the page. Will you come, sir? What is the truth, ma'am? That the marshal of this town beat a 16-year-old boy on a north pasture yesterday, at the bidding of a man named Cranston, who is buying up the rail spur land using a false name through the First Bank of Laramie. The whole of it. The whole rotten thing. Will you come? Ma'am, I have buried half this town. I have buried Mr. Hawthorne's wife. I have buried his little daughter. I will tell you what I told the Lord on my knees the day I put little Hannah Hawthorne in the ground. He picked up the broom. He set it down again. I said, the day you give me a chance to put something right in this country, I will not hesitate. The Lord has his own clock, ma'am. But he keeps an appointment when he sets one. I will come. They came into Cottonwood Ridge by a back road Bowen knew. Bowen had buried half this town, and he knew every road and every fence gap a wagon could pass through after dark. They left the wagon behind the chapel. They walked the last 3 blocks. Mrs. Yue opened the side door before Margaret could knock. You come 3 together. Good. Inside. Fast. She closed the door. She slid the bolt across it. Reverend, you good man. I see you walk in church on Sunday. You say thing to crowd. People do not listen. I listen. Ma'am, I am at your service. Good. Here is paper. Here is ink. I write. You sign. Lady sign. Mr. Caleb sign. 4 name on truth. Then we hide paper. Tomorrow my nephew friend he take paper to U.S. Marshal in Cheyenne. Not town marshal. U.S. Marshal. Mrs. Yue, how did you know about the U.S. Marshal? My nephew work in office of U.S. Marshal in Cheyenne. 5 year. Good boy. Honest boy. He tell me, auntie, if you ever see crime in Wyoming territory, you do not tell town. You tell U.S. Marshal. He will come. She bent over the paper. She wrote in a careful, slow hand. She wrote what she had seen. She wrote what she had heard. She wrote the 3 names of the 3 men whose faces she had memorized when they brought her bloody shirts the night before. She wrote Cranston. She wrote Edward Cranston. She wrote Harlan Pike. She wrote how much money had passed from Crane to Pike and where and how many times. She signed her name. She pushed the paper to Bowen. He read it once. He set his hand to the page. He signed his name. He pushed it to Caleb. Caleb signed. He pushed it to Margaret. Margaret signed. 4 names. On the truth. Now we hide." She lifted a floorboard near the stove. She tucked the paper inside an oiled cloth. She set the board back down. "You go now, quick. Back way. Do not stop." And then a sound at the front of the building. A horse. Then another. Then a man's voice that did not belong to Mrs. Yue's nephew. "Out. Back door. Now." "Mrs. Yue, come with us." "I cannot, lady. They come for me. They expect Chinese widow in laundry. If laundry empty, they look for me. They find paper. You go. I stay. I am old. I am ready." "Ma'am, we do not leave you." "Mr. Caleb, you leave me. You take Reverend. You take lady. You take paper out of the board. Put inside coat. Tomorrow morning my nephew friend, he come he find empty house. He ride to ranch. Go." The smell of smoke had begun. She handed the oiled cloth to Caleb. She pushed them toward the back. "Mrs. Yue." "Lady, I have been waiting 20 years to be useful. Go now. Be the lady I waited for." There was a crackle from the front. A glass window breaking outward. Shouts of men. The sound of fire taking the painted boards on the inside of the front wall. Bowen seized Margaret's arm. "Margaret, go." She went. They ran through the rear alley, down behind the Chandlers, through the gap in a fence Bowen knew about because he had pulled the fence rails himself 2 summers ago when he buried a man on the other side of it. Around behind the chapel, to the wagon. When they reached the wagon, the sky over the laundry was orange. "We need to go back." "Caleb." "Reverend, that woman is alone in that building." "She is not alone, Mr. Hawthorne. She is with the truth she chose to stand on. And if we ride back, sir, the men who lit her on fire will catch us. They will take what is in your coat. And tomorrow morning, there will not be a single name on a single page in this whole state of Wyoming who will speak for her. Get on the wagon, now." He got on. Bowen climbed up after. Margaret climbed up last. They drove. They did not look back. About a mile out of town, Margaret broke. She did not break loud. She broke quiet. Her hands shook on the carbine, and then she laid the carbine down on the wagon bed, and she pressed her hands flat against her knees, and she said very small, "I left her, Caleb. I left her in a burning building." He kept driving. "Margaret. She told me to. I did what she told me to do, but I left her. She is going to die alone in that building, and I—" "Margaret, hush." "Do not tell me to hush, sir." "Hush, Margaret. Hush. Listen. She said she had been waiting 20 years to be useful. There is a kind of waiting a person does when they have no other thing to do but wait. And there is the other kind of waiting, which is the waiting of a person who has chosen what they are waiting for. She had chosen. She had chosen long before tonight. We did not leave her, Margaret. We carried her. We carried her in the coat. We carried her in the paper. We carried her in the 4 names. We are carrying her right now." She did not answer. She did not weep. But she set her hand flat on the front of Caleb's coat, over the place where the oiled cloth was, and she kept it there for a long time. When the ranch came into view, Major was barking again. Tom Riley was on the porch with the carbine in his hands. Caleb riders, coming up the South Trail. 4 of them. "How long out, Tom?" 3 minutes, maybe 2. "Reverend, the boy is in the kitchen. You stay with him. You take the paper. If we go down, sir, if we go down, you ride for the U.S. Marshal yourself. You promise me." "Caleb Hawthorne, I promise you." "Margaret." "Mr. Hawthorne." "You are frightened, ma'am." "Yes, sir. I am frightened plenty." "Good. Frightened folk shoot straight. You and me at the front door. Tom at the corner of the barn. Major, hush. Stay with the boy." The 4 of them moved into the dark. The riders pulled up 40 yards short of the porch. They held lanterns. One of them moved his horse forward into the lantern light. It was Silas Crane. He was no longer in his city coat. He was in a long oilcloth coat and a wide hat. There was a pistol at his hip, and for the first time since Margaret had laid eyes on him, there was no smile on his face. "Hawthorne, Hawthorne, you fool. Come out here and we can settle this between gentlemen. Bring me back the paper that old woman gave you. I will tear up the note tomorrow morning. Do you hear me, son? Silas, you set fire to a building with an old woman inside. That was a mistake of my men, Caleb. That was not my doing. I rode out here to tell you so. Margaret's voice came from the dark beside him. Mr. Cranston, we know your right name. A long silence. Mrs. Sullivan, we know your brother. We know your scheme. We know your marshal. We know the 6 other ranches. We know the well in 80. We know the bull in 74. We know all of it, sir. Tomorrow morning at first light, a rider you cannot stop will be on a fast horse to Cheyenne. You will not get back the paper. You will not buy back your name. Turn your horse around, Mr. Cranston, and ride toward whatever country has not yet heard your name. Tonight, before the United States Marshal hears from us. Crane's hand moved toward the pistol at his hip. It was the worst mistake he had made in a long, long career of bad ones. Caleb's rifle cracked once. The hat blew off Crane's head. Crane froze. Silas, the next one is 1 inch lower. You touch that pistol again, and your wife in Cheyenne is planning a funeral. Move your hand. Slow. Away. Crane moved his hand. Slow. Away. The 3 men with him had not moved at all. They were rough men. But they were rough men who had been hired by a banker, and the banker now had a parted hairline he had not had 30 seconds ago. Caleb, you don't want to do this. Silas. What I want at this moment is the privilege of finishing what you started. The only reason I have not done it is there is a man named Bowen in my kitchen, and there is a woman named Sullivan in this dooryard, and between them, they have more goodness than this whole territory deserves. So I will let you ride, Silas. I will give you what your men did not give Mrs. Yue. You have 10 seconds. Turn the horse. A long second. 2, 3. Crane turned the horse. His men turned theirs. The 4 of them rode south. Caleb did not lower the rifle until the lanterns were gone behind the rise. Then he lowered it. His hand was shaking. Margaret reached across in the dark and took the rifle from him. Mr. Hawthorne. Ma'am. Sit down on the porch step. Just for a minute, sir. Just for 1 minute. He sat down on the porch step. She sat down beside him. Major came out from the kitchen and laid his head on Caleb's knee. Inside, the preacher Bowen was reading something low and gentle to the boy on the table, in a voice that did not carry words. After a while, Margaret said, Mr. Hawthorne, I do not know if Mrs. Yue is alive in that building tonight. I do not know which it is. But if she is alive, sir, she is alive because we carried what she gave us. And if she is not, then we will carry it twice as far. We will not stop carrying it, Mr. Hawthorne. We will carry it the rest of our lives. Caleb did not answer. But after a long moment, he reached over and laid his hand on top of hers, where it sat on the porch board between them. And out in the dark beyond the cottonwoods, somewhere on the south trail, the sound of 4 horses going hard was already too far gone to hear. But Margaret could still hear it. She could hear it inside her chest. And she knew the way a woman knows a fever is going to break that something in the territory had turned tonight. Something that would not turn back. The night did not end the way Margaret had thought it would. They sat on the porch in the dark a long time. The 3 of them, her Caleb and Major, until the moon had moved a hand's width across the sky and the air had cooled enough to bite. Tom Riley came around the corner of the barn at last and said his arms had locked up from holding the carbine, and could he please come in and sit down. Margaret laughed once. It surprised her. It surprised Caleb more. He looked at her like a man who had just heard music for the first time in 6 years. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Hawthorne. I have not heard you laugh before. You have not given me much occasion, sir. That is so. We shall have to remedy it. Yes, ma'am. I expect we shall. In the kitchen, the preacher Bowen was asleep in the chair beside the table where Sam Riley lay. The boy was asleep too. Bowen's hand rested on the boy's wrist the way a man holds the wrist of a fevered child, whose pulse he intends to count even in his sleep. Margaret stood in the doorway a long time. Then she said very low, Mr. Hawthorne, there is a difference between a country and a town. A country can be cruel because it has no name and no face. A town has names. A town has faces. A town can do better, sir, if it chooses to. You believe this town will choose to? I believe one preacher and one Chinese widow and one old ranch hand and one boy already have. The rest will follow. They almost always do. They are only waiting for someone to stand up first. Margaret, who stood up first tonight? Mrs. Yue, Mr. Hawthorne. That is not the right answer. It is the right answer, sir, and you will not talk me out of it. He almost smiled. Almost. Just before dawn, Major began to bark. Tom Riley was at this window first. It's a kid, Caleb, riding hard, one rider, hands up. Open the door. The kid was no older than Sam. He was small and lean and Chinese on a horse foamed white at the chest. He slid off it before it was fully stopped. Mr. Caleb Hawthorne. Son, you'd be Mrs. Yue's nephew's friend. Yes, sir. My name Henry Liu. I am here for the paper. Margaret, bring it. She brought it. Caleb pulled the oiled cloth from inside his coat and put it in the boy's hand. Son, listen. There are 4 men south of here who are going to want this paper. They will pay any amount of money for it. They will kill you for it. You understand me? Yes, sir. How long to Cheyenne? 2 days. 1 day half if I do not stop. Don't stop, son. I do not stop. Margaret stepped forward. She drew something from her apron pocket. It was a small lump in a folded handkerchief. Mr. Liu, I have $3.12 to my name in this world. I want you to have it. It is not for the ride. It is for if you reach Cheyenne and the U.S. Marshal does not pay you. I am not a wealthy woman, sir, but I am a woman who knows what it is to be promised payment and to receive none. So you take this and you carry it. And if the federal government decides to forget you, the way the railroad once decided to forget Mrs. Yue, you remember that one widow in Cottonwood Ridge did not forget. The boy took the handkerchief. His eyes were dry. He did not cry easily either. Ma'am, Mrs. Yue has not been my aunt. She has been my mother since I was 8-year-old. She raised me after smallpox. I would carry this paper to Cheyenne with my teeth if I had no hands. $3.12 is not why I carry, but I take it. I take it because you offer like she would offer. Thank you, ma'am. He swung up onto the horse. He rode south. He was gone before the sun cleared the cottonwoods. By noon, they could not stand it any longer. Caleb and Margaret and the preacher Bowen rode into town. Tom Riley stayed with the boy who was sitting up now eating an egg, demanding to know why his uncle had not let him kick the men back. Cottonwood Ridge was strange. It was strange because Margaret could feel it before she could see it. The men were not at the saloon rail. The women were on the boardwalk. The doors of the mercantile stood open with no one inside them. The boardwalk in front of the burned-out laundry was thick with townspeople, 20-30 of them standing in a loose half-circle around something on the ground. Mr. Hawthorne. I see it. What is it? I do not know. The crowd parted for them. Margaret heard a woman she had never met say, "Let her through, let her through." She was there. She did not understand what that meant. Then she did. Mrs. Yue was sitting on a stool in the middle of the half-circle. Her tunic was burned along one side. Her hair was singed. Her right hand was bandaged. A young woman Margaret did not know was holding a cup of water to her lips. She was alive. Margaret stopped walking. She stood there in the middle of the street, and after 11 years and 4 months, without weeping, Margaret Sullivan put her hand over her mouth and she wept. Not loud, not long, but she wept. Caleb reached for her arm. She waved him off. She wiped her face with the back of her own hand. Mrs. Yue. The old woman looked up. Lady, you come. Mrs. Yue, how? Cellar, under floor. Old cellar from before the laundry. Crane men, they look upstairs. They look for paper. They do not look down. I wait. Smoke come. I crawl through coal hole. Doc Whitfield pull me out at 4 o'clock this morning. I sleep 2 hour. Then I come sit here. Why are you sitting here, ma'am? I want town to see me, lady. I want town to look. I sit here all day. I sit until U.S. Marshal come. I sit so the town has to walk past me. So the town has to look. Margaret knelt down on the boardwalk. The Chinese widow put her bandaged hand on Margaret's cheek. Lady, the town is looking. Yes, ma'am. The town is looking. Now we wait for Marshall, together. It took the U.S. Marshal 4 days. He did not come alone. He came with 3 deputies, a federal judge, and a clerk who wrote everything down. He came with a warrant for Edward Cranston signed in Cheyenne, another for Silas Cranston, also known as Crane, a third for Harlan Pike, a 4th blank one, which he filled in on the depot platform with Margaret Sullivan watching for a man named Briggs. The town watched it. Every porch had a person on it. Pike was arrested at his desk eating cornbread. Briggs was arrested in the barn behind the hotel, hiding under a horse blanket. Silas Cranston was caught 2 days later trying to board a southbound train at Laramie under the name Stephen Carter, with $300 in his boot and a one-way ticket to St. Louis. He sobbed at his arraignment. The judge was not impressed. The judge was a man named Reed, who had lost a son in the war and a daughter to a fraudulent land contract in '78, and the judge wrote in his order that the defendant's tears are noted by this court and weighed at the value they have earned, which is none. Edward Cranston, the railroad commissioner, was arrested in Cheyenne in his own office. He resisted. The deputy broke his nose. The deputy was not sorry. The story moved. From Cottonwood Ridge to Cheyenne, from Cheyenne to Omaha, from Omaha east by telegraph to a Chicago newspaper man who had been waiting his whole career for a story like this one. The headline read, "Brother of Railroad Commissioner Arrested in Wyoming. Scheme Widow's Testimony Cracks Year-Long Conspiracy." There was no mention of a kitchen woman from Pittsburgh. Margaret did not mind. She had not done it for a newspaper. The note was torn up. The First Bank of Laramie was dissolved by federal order. The deeds of all 6 purchased ranches were returned to their original owners or their widows. McTavish came back from Iowa. Mrs. Hill came back from Denver. The Carvers were dead. Both had died in the year after they sold, but their orphan boys who had been farmed out to a relative in Kansas were brought home by the same Reverend Bowen who had buried them. Bowen preached the next Sunday on the verse, "I will repay, saith the Lord, the years that the locusts have eaten." It was the only sermon in the history of Cottonwood Ridge during which not a single person fell asleep. Mrs. Yue did not rebuild the laundry. She did not have to. The town rebuilt it. They rebuilt it bigger. They put a sign over the door that said, "UAs," in painted letters 2 feet tall. The marshal's office got a new man. His name was Halloran. His wife took over the school, and the salary went from 30 cents a week to $4. The town voted for it. Cottonwood Ridge changed. It did not change overnight. It did not change wholly. There were still men at the saloon rail who would have said cruel things to a plus-sized widow if a plus-sized widow had stepped off the noon stage. But there were fewer of them, and the ones who remained no longer said it loud. 2 summers later, on a porch under a sky going gold, Caleb Hawthorne asked Margaret Sullivan to marry him. He did not get down on one knee. She would not have permitted it. He was 52, and he had a back full of Vicksburg, and she had no intention of helping him back up. He just stood beside her. "Margaret." "Caleb, I have been wanting to ask you a thing for about a year now." "You have been wanting to ask me a thing for about 2 years, sir." "You have been working up to it for 1. "That is so." "Ask Mr. Hawthorne." "Margaret, would you do me the honor?" "Yes." "Margaret, I have not finished the question." "I have finished the answer, sir. You may catch up at your own pace." He looked at her a long time. Then he laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had not used the muscles for it in 8 years and was not sure he remembered how. It came out small. It came out crooked. It came out anyway. She turned to him. She put her hand against his cheek. "Caleb Hawthorne." "Margaret, why did you wait 2 years to ask me?" "Because I did not want to ask you out of gratitude, Margaret. I did not want to ask because you had saved my ranch. I wanted to ask you because I had become on this ranch a man who knew the difference between the two. It took me a while." "And which is it, sir?" "It is the second, Margaret. It has been the second for a long time." She kissed him then. It was not a young kiss. It was not a romantic novel kiss. It was the kiss of two people who had buried more than they had carried, and who had, against all the odds the country could throw at them, found in each other one more thing worth carrying. It was enough. They were married in the chapel that fall. Reverend Bowen performed the ceremony. He preached for 9 minutes. He had never preached so short. There are two kinds of love in this world. There is the love that comes when a man and a woman are young, and they have not yet known what the world is going to take from them. That love is good. I have buried 2/3 of it in this town, and I do not speak against it. But there is the other kind. There is the kind that comes when two people have already been broken on the wheel of the world, and have already paid their tax of grief, and have already buried what they cannot get back. And those two people find each other anyway, and they choose anyway. That kind of love, friends, that is not the love of the young. That is the love of the lasting, and it is the love we are witness to today. Caleb, Margaret, take each other. You have already paid for the privilege. He pronounced them married. The town clapped. The town clapped for a plus-sized widow from Pittsburgh who had walked off a stagecoach into a country that meant to break her and had instead broken the country back. The town clapped for a wounded rancher who had not stood up straight in 6 years and was standing straight now with a wife on his arm and a Bible in his hand and an old dog at his feet. The town clapped for Mrs. Yue, who sat in the front row in a red silk jacket the parsonage women had ordered for her from San Francisco, with her bandaged hand on the knee of the boy Sam Riley, who had been her surrogate grandson for 19 months. They never had children of their own. Margaret had been past it before they met, but they raised one anyway. Her name was Hannah Carver Hawthorne. She was 11 years old when they found her the youngest of the orphans Bowen had brought home from Kansas. Her older brother went to live with McTavish. She came to the Hawthorne Ranch. She named the new colt. She slept in the room at the end of the hall that had once been Caleb's sister's, and then